everyone. My name is Lynne Bowman from the Transformative Play Initiative at the Department of Game Design at Uppsala University. Today, we're going to talk about safety in role-playing games, and specifically about role-playing games in terms of their potential for transformation and how safety plays into that. So this is part one of a 5-part series in which we will be discussing some general concepts around transformation and safety. In the following parts, we will talk about strategies for safety before the game, during the game, after the game, and when fostering the community in general. So role-playing games are co-creative experiences where participants immerse into fictional characters and realities for a bounded period of time through this emergent playfulness. There are 3 main types of role-playing games. There's the virtual or digital role-playing, which is text-based or graphical through a computer interface, and it's usually single or multiplayer. There's tabletop, which is usually played sitting at a table, sometimes with dice, character sheets, and miniatures, and that is less physical and more verbal. And then there's live action role-playing games, or LARP, which is physically embodied role-playing, sometimes with costumes, props, and special locations. And we're going to be focusing mainly on tabletop and LARP. And there will be certain techniques that we're going to talk about today that will be useful in both, but some are specific to each form. So transformation is a prolonged and sustained state of change, meaning that it's a shift in one's consciousness that has lasting after effects. So typically when we role play, we have, temporary shifts in consciousness. We shift into character or into fiction, and then we shift out. Transformation is a prolonged and sustained state long after the game has concluded. Now, that doesn't mean that you're in the character long after the game has concluded, but perhaps aspects of your perception have changed. So for example, a player might change how they view themselves, also called their identity. They may change how they view reality, such as their paradigm. They may change how they view others and interact with them, their relationships. They may change how they view society, including its structures and their own place within those structures, as well as the roles of others within those structures. And it may view how the player views cultures, subcultures, and countercultural movements. As Jonea Kemper puts it, role-playing games allow us to Wyrd the self, meaning consciously transmute our identities through intentional play, also called steering. So the idea here is that a lot of these transformative impacts happen sort of by accident, but we can actually intentionally steer towards this weirding of the self, or this making magical or shifting or transforming the self. So regardless of the type of transformation or the type of role-playing game, the keys to success for any transformative process are reflection and processing. And we're going to talk about that as we move forward. Goal setting can also be very helpful, but keep in mind that role-playing games are unpredictable in their impacts as a result of emergent play. And that unpredictability is one of the things that we try to put these safety techniques in place for, in order to try to account for it and adapt to it as needed. It's often good to have intentionality at all stages, at design, implementation, and play. And this can help our group steer towards specific transformative impacts that we would like to have. The perception of safety is important in order to establish and maintain a sense of well-being for people within role-playing communities. Safety allows participants to lower their vigilance and surrender more deeply to playfulness as a central part of the transformative process. Now, when we say lower their vigilance and surrender more deeply, we're not referring to, being mindless or somehow being controlled. We're talking about people feeling comfortable enough and trusting enough in the process that they can actually fully engage. But safety necessitates enthusiastic consent, i.e. the ability to opt in and opt out, as well as calibration and other forms of negotiation and self-advocacy. And we're going to talk about a lot of techniques for that today. And so what consent might look like in a role-playing game is, say two characters have an antagonism built into their characters' dynamics, and they negotiate maybe beforehand what kinds of aggression they're comfortable role-playing. And perhaps, you know, they make an agreement that they're comfortable with yelling, but not any sort of physical altercation, that sort of thing. And consent should be something that is checked in on as much as possible, and people can revoke at any point. So maybe halfway through the game, they decide, no, I'm actually not comfortable with yelling, and then that can be renegotiated. So we believe that role-playing games can become transformational containers. And these containers provide a secure enough holding environment for playful experimentation, where authentic expressions of self can emerge. And so what we mean by that is, if players feel held in the experience, meaning they feel like they're not going to be dropped in some way, whether it's by other players or by the facilitators or the designers, et cetera, then they're often more readily interested in transformation or open to it. Role-playing games give us alibi, which is permission to behave in ways that might otherwise feel risky or socially unacceptable. And that allows us to feel more confident taking risks and even failing as part of the learning process. And then we can also experience bleed, which is this spillover from player to character and vice versa. And it could be thoughts, emotions, processes, physical states, relationships, personality traits, ideological constructs, all sorts of things can bleed in and bleed out. And here we have an image of the transformational container. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the self or the daily identity. And we put that in quotes because that's the self that we're expected to perform in everyday life. And then we have some goals or agreements, transparency, consent, safety structures, and community support. And that allows us to feel more comfortable bringing in our intentionality and our playfulness to this magic circle of play, as it's called. And that also gives us more alibi because we've created this social contract with other participants that have these focuses in mind. And then we play this alter ego, this character, have these experiences, and then we can bleed out into our daily identity or transfer particular insights or skills to our daily identity that then changes it and alters it in some way. And again, we need goals, we need processing and reflection, we need concrete action steps, safety structures, and community support in order to maximize those impacts. So how do we create safety structures and community support? That's what we're really going to be focusing on today. So role-playing games can be intensely enjoyable, they can feel cathartic, and they can even feel liberating. They can also be emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically exhausting because when we play, we tend to push ourselves to our limits. They can lead to intimacy and vulnerable exposure of parts of self that are normally hidden or protected, since this vigilance is relaxed and this playfulness is activated. And it can lead players to push past certain points of resistance that they might have due to this perception of safety. And when we say the perception of safety, we don't mean to say that it's not safe and people think it is, but rather there is no such thing as total safety. It's important that people feel safe in order to engage. And one of the reasons people push past these points of resistance is because they have these fictional identities and circumstances that make it so that they feel comfortable doing so. And role-playing games are experienced as both fictional and real by the brain at the same time. And this is a really important point with regard to safety, because at any time we can negotiate with each other off game, but sometimes the events that are happening in game can feel extremely real. So what are the ways that we can signal to each other what we need at any given moment? That's what we're going to talk about today. So as a result of all of these things, players may neglect their physical or emotional needs due to their investment in the role-playing experience. This tends to happen a lot at LARPs, but it can also happen in tabletop games. For example, losing sleep, not taking medication that they need, not hydrating enough, etc. They may feel more safe in the environment than they actually are. And so when people's vigilance is lowered and something unsafe that feels unsafe happens, it can actually be even more devastating than if vigilance was raised. They may open themselves up to predation, so-called missing stairs, which is this term that refers to people in the community that are known to have harassed or harmed people, but are allowed to remain in the community. And often the phrase is like, don't mind the missing stair. And there's an image here by David Constanzo. And this idea of don't mind the missing stair often leads to a lot of people being harmed by the same individuals over and over again. And there can also be harassment or other forms of boundary pushing behavior. And these things may not be purposeful or, even repeated, but it can happen. I mean, we're playing with we're playing with our edges. So of course we're going to bump up against each other's edges. We may experience trauma triggers and other forms of activation that are overwhelming or distressing. So one doesn't need to be a victim of trauma in order to have a feeling of activation that's overwhelming. It doesn't really matter what the source is. The idea here is to help us provide more safety amongst each other in the group. And people may experience microaggressions, racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, or other harmful stereotypes. And that might happen within the role-playing community itself or within play. And it can be really tricky when it happens in play because this alibi of the game can permit certain kinds of behavior that would be otherwise unacceptable. For example, it's what my character would have done when somebody is saying something racist in a game. Now, there may be situations where that is agreed upon and where it's actually part of the goal of the game is to experience, let's say, racism, but that needs to be agreed upon by everybody in the group. And there is a larger safety conversation that's happening around these games that is not just what happens at the table or at any specific LARP, but is also happening within the community. So people should be ready to defend design choices that feature this kind of content. And it's advisable to bring in cultural consultants that have that certain lived experience. And we're going to get into that later. Just a little note here about microaggressions. Sometimes these kinds of harm are not as obvious as others. They may be subtle, even to the point where the person may not even realize that they're engaging in them. So an example of a microaggression might be when someone asks repeatedly for someone to use certain pronouns for them, and that other person continually misgenders them or just refuses to use those pronouns. All right, so I'd like to start us off in our discussion about specific safety techniques with a quote from Johanna Koljonen, who is one of the leaders in the field in discussing safety in role-playing games. And Johanna says, LARP is not dangerous, life is. And what I like about this quote is it emphasizes that the kinds of things that we're talking about, these safety triggers, microaggressions, harassment, all these kinds of things, they can happen in any setting, and they in fact do happen in any setting. You know, life itself has problems and has difficulties. And even just feeling overwhelmed or experiencing bleed, or, you know, developing feelings for another co-player that need to be discussed, or negotiating consent. These are things that we can learn in life that actually might help us. So one way to think about these safety techniques is ways for us to use games to sort of min-max life as well. And in fact, a lot of people who start using these techniques end up applying them in their daily lives as well in some sort of way, and at least find them useful conceptually. So key points here. The question is not what to do if, but rather when participants have experiences of feeling unsafe or overwhelmed. So this is inevitable, it will happen. And so being prepared is really helpful. Safety issues, when they arise, can be learning experiences for everyone involved if they're treated with the proper seriousness and care. And that's a huge caveat. For example, if someone feels harassed by another player, it's not incumbent on that person to have a learning experience of forgiving the player that harassed them. However, if the situation can be handled with sufficient care and everyone feels like their needs are met, it can actually be really important for people to have these kinds of not necessarily interactions, but ways that we process things as a community. Because there are some situations where it's not ideal to have people necessarily directly confronting one another. However, if handled badly, safety problems can cause lasting damage, both to individual lives and to the health of the overall community. And this can become particularly problematic if things are left to fester and, you know, factions start developing within the group and people are expected to take sides, that sort of thing. So preparation on the part of the designers, facilitators, and the player group can help. And we're going to talk about these three categories throughout the rest of this talk. So before the game, things like workshopping safety techniques and establishing norms for care. During the game, using safety techniques when needed, checking in with others and with ourselves. Sometimes we forget to check in with ourselves. And then calibration, so learning how to modulate play based on the needs of others and ourselves. And then after the game, we can engage in debriefing, reflection, processing, and any sort of meaningful and effective follow-up procedures that need to happen when safety issues arise. So it's not just a question of creating a perception of safety, it's also being able to back up any actions that need to be taken in order to ensure safety. That being said, simply normalizing the discussion of safety can help participants feel more safe. So just creating a culture where safety is discussed actually can help people feel more safe. And then this is a phrase that we say often, but is surprisingly controversial. Players are more important than games. So ultimately, no matter what experience you're trying to create, individual players or group psychology and their needs and their psychological well-being are more important than the game. So core components of safety in transformational role-playing game communities. We're going to talk about some components that you can integrate before the game. These are strategies for establishing norms for play and safety before the game even starts. We're going to talk about strategies during the game, and these are strategies for negotiating consent and calibrating. After the game, so processing emotions and experiences, whether individually or as a group. And then strategies for the community, so cultivating healthier, safer communities with an emphasis on the players and not the game. So that concludes part 1 of our safety in role-playing games video. We are going to transition now to part 2, where we are going to talk about some safety strategies that you might want to employ before your game starts.